Hello, everybody. It is Dr. Weber. Today, we're going to talk about curriculum development and lesson planning in adapted PE, unified PE, and general PE. And we'll also talk about warm ups, fitness, and low organized games. Okay. So, warm ups and fitness, we'll combine those because I think fitness is a great time to include the warm up. And then I like low organized games after the warm up. So this is kind of in sequential order of how I would plan a lesson. So typically you start with a warm up, hopefully it includes some fitness components, and then you go into some low organized games, and then you can get into any of the major primary skills that you're going to learn, whether that's sports skills or if they're going to be fitness related skills. So the last half of the lesson should be dedicated toward learning specific skills, where the first half of the lesson should be a time where you're learning about movement, learning about whether it's dance or kickboxing, mobility, power, strength, that type of thing. And then going into some low organized games that involve cooperation with students and also just fun means to exercise and enjoy physical activity together. Low organized games include fitness and sport components that we'll talk about. So, what are your learning outcomes? You should be able to discuss and apply content standards within a lesson plan for individuals with disabilities. You should be able to talk about warm ups and cool downs as they relate to lesson planning. And what I'll tell you about cool downs is I would typically teach a warm up exercise as a cool down exercise. So it might be just a light stretch, or it could be just light conversation. Discuss the appropriate warm up strategies within general PE, unified PE, and adaptive PE. So we have three different types of PE we'll talk about. General PE is for people without disabilities, where you may have one or two people with disabilities in it. And then you have unified PE, where you have half people with disabilities, half people without disabilities. And then you have adaptive PE, which is just individuals with disabilities. So we'll discuss skill and health related components of fitness as it relates to individuals with disabilities. We'll discuss certain specific impairments and how to adapt lesson plans to the unique learner. We'll discuss the low organized games and the adaptation modifications that accompany these games for specific disabilities. And we'll describe equipment types, characteristics as it relates to unified PE and general PE. We'll discuss general PE, unified PE, and adaptive PE IEPs, lessons as it relates to least restrictive environment for people with disabilities. So we are at presentation number 7. This is a big one. So, if you want to take a break after every 20 minutes, I would recommend that. We're going to talk about lesson planning, specifically curriculum development, and we'll get into warm-ups and fitness, low organized games, and we'll talk about a ton of adaptations and modifications for people with disabilities today. The next lesson will be on target games, striking and fielding games, invasion games, net and court games. So teaching games for understanding. And then we'll get into aquatics, and then we'll end it with effective instruction for behavior change. So the curriculum models in PE, this resource here is going to go over 5 different content components. So the basic movement skills model. So you have basic movement skills, creative movement, fitness, games approach, and then you have health and wellness. These are all different curricular models we have in physical education. So it's important to understand the different curriculum models in physical education before teaching anyone, whether it's adaptive PE or physical education. So this will go over all the basic locomotor and manipulative skills like the TGMD. It'll also talk about skill progressions like body awareness, spatial awareness, quality of movement, relationships. Okay, it'll go over all the different cues for skipping, hopping, throwing, catching, kicking, striking, volleying, and individual skills like volleyball setting and bumping. It even has dribbling and all the different types of exercises that you would encounter in the TGMD, which we've talked about for assessments. So those are all basically the basic schools. You can also go over orienteering with them in that unit as well. After you've learned basic skills, or while you're learning basic skills, you also want to have a creative component. So think about yoga, dance, gymnastics. So you could talk about rhythmic and choreography. You could teach them new dances. You should teach them different balance and gymnastic exercises if you can. If you have the time and energy, you might want to learn some of these things on your own, especially yoga, getting in the right positions. When it comes to fitness, there is a fitness model that's going to be health related and skill related fitness. So, health related fitness is basically muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, and then BMI. And then you have skill related, which is going to be power, speed, agility, coordination. So, just understand that while you are teaching TGMD, you're also teaching fitness. So basically, what we are as physical educators is we're fitness and sport instructors. So just understand that there's fitness components, there's games. Okay, so you can talk about different types of games and the teaching styles, which we'll get into in a future lesson. But when it comes to games, you can include sport games, which are traditional, using the sport education model, which is mainly for secondary students. And you can also use teaching games for understanding, which we'll get into in the following lesson. There's also cooperative games, which we'll talk about when it comes to low organized games. And these are all different components of games that we can teach in physical education. We can also teach wellness. So, wellness, engaging in health activities. Think about emotional wellness, nutrition, and social wellness. These are all different types of ways we can deal with social well-being, communication. We can send clear messages. We can talk about the 6 essential nutrients. We can talk about meal planning, the 5 food groups. These are all different types of nutrition elements we can add into physical education. So here are just some general curriculums in PE that you can use: basic movement approach, creative movement approach, fitness, games, and wellness. I also have skill themes here. So space awareness, traveling, chasing, fleeing, and dodging, throwing and catching, dribbling, volleying, all your elementary age skills with some videos that you can view. So when it comes to space awareness, okay, we have pre-control, utilization, and proficiency. So basically, pre-control is move in general space without bumping, and proficiency is to see and move in open space and to throw, kick into open spaces. So there's different levels of space awareness. There's different levels of relationships and efforts. And I have all these kind of outlined in these documents. Okay, talking about traveling activities, walking, galloping, acting like a sloth, acting like a cheetah, moving around the gym. These are all locomotor skills. So we have in our lesson planning, we have lots of different content we can teach, lots of different resources that we can utilize. Here's an example of a K through 5 scope and sequence. So basically, when you are educating for a full year, you're going to want to have a scope and sequence of how to teach your grade level. So if you're a general PE, you'll have something like this: K through 5, what lessons you're going to teach and when you're going to teach them and how long you're going to teach them for. Typically, teachers will have about 4 to 8 units with 3 to 5 lesson plans per unit. So sometimes you might go over 3 different lessons, and that might take 3 or 4 weeks. So if you're going over 1 lesson a week, maybe you go through 3 to 4 lessons in per unit, and you might change the unit or the sport or the fitness component every single unit. And so you go through a whole year and you work using the standards and objectives that our state gives us, but then we have to go ahead and actually teach them, and we have to find games and activities that are fun and meaningful. So just understand that you'll create a scope and sequence such as this. We also have this packet here, which is high school physical education curriculum essentials document. This will guide you if you're a high school teacher on all the different curriculum maps and templates that you can use, and unit design templates and templates to help you teach activities throughout a whole year. It's got a glossary, and it's got um, all the different requisites for teaching physical education in there. It kind of strings you along. I also have this very long one. This is a physical education program for Madison Public Schools I found online, and I believe it's over 100 pages, and it goes over even a template as far as student name and comments about that individual, and giving them assessment on activities, cooperation, following directions, participation. So these are all nice lesson planning curriculum guides for physical educators and adapted physical educators. These are quick guides where when it comes to what grade levels, what objectives. These are all good for beginning teachers, especially if you've never taught these skills, to kind of give you the template and guides needed to teach PE. So it's really important that you have all the resources at your disposal before you create a lesson plan, and you should have observed other experienced teachers and leaders in the field. And I think through that and observing video and doing it yourself, you're going to learn a lot about the curriculum models and how to teach physical education. So hopefully you learn that throughout your career. You know that you'll be using the national and state PE standards as well as adapted PE standards. I have those available on this PowerPoint as well. These are the 4 SHAPE physical education standards. There were 5. They've kind of made them more efficient with having 4. So now we're going to talk about designing appropriate warm-ups. So when it comes to warming up your class, what are the exercises and activities you should teach individuals with disabilities and without disabilities prior to your lesson plan? So typically when you have a lesson, you have a primary activity that you want them to learn. Say it's underhand serving, or it's throwing and catching, or it's kicking a ball for accuracy. So you want to have 1 to 3 major primary skills, whether that's kicking, dribbling, shooting a ball. It could be tennis, volleying, and getting a game going. So whatever your primary activity is, that you save that till like 20 to 30 minutes into your lesson. You want to design an appropriate warm-up that includes the health-related components of fitness, because that is a good time to include them. And we can use the sport as a pre-MAC principle, where we say, all right, first we're going to do our fitness and our warm-up exercises, then we're going to do the sport activity that most students will believe is more fun. So we want to think, okay, what do we need to do first to get to our sport activity? Or if you have another fitness activity planned, that's fine as well. So generally speaking, warm-ups should include getting the students' attention. This is where you're going to set the induction for the class. So first you're going to set the induction for the class and say, hi everyone, today we're going to be learning about, let's just say it's basketball. Has anyone ever played basketball? Talk to your friend and ask them who their favorite basketball player is, or who they've seen on TV play basketball, that type of thing. After you've had some social conversation, you're going to start your warm-up. So it's generally going to be, maybe you have the students walking and talking when they arrive, and then when class starts, they meet you in the center, or they meet you in a circle, or they meet you all facing you. Make sure all students can see you. Then you can start going over warm-up exercises. So if everyone is in their own personal space, you could give poly spots for each student so that they're all marked, so everyone's equally distanced. That's a good way to get everyone separated. You could use yoga mats, but sometimes having that will cause transitional issues where you have to pick up the mats or pick up the spots, or people have to own the spots. So you could also just have no equipment But if you need thick mats or a chair for an individual, make sure you have that available. But during the warm up phase of your lesson plan, this is when you want to first maybe start with a breathing exercise. One, because it will lower their stress, make them more calm. You can tell them, we can talk to them about stress and anxiety, or we could tell them how to, um, you know, lower stress and anxiety by improving breath work, and tell them how to breathe throughout the lesson. This will maybe bring a calmness to the lesson. So you could do some type of yoga strategy in your warm up, light stretching, light body weight movements, light mobility, easy exercises that everyone's included in. So you're thinking not only for my general PE, but for my adapted students, I'm thinking all these students, what would I want them to do? I want all my students, regardless of what their disability is, to focus on their breathing, to maybe start engaging their core by performing some core exercises after your mobility, or some activation exercises like isometric exercises like downward dog or push up hold, or a crab hold, something like that. Then after doing some activation exercises, we can get into some more dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching, some movement stretching that can be across the court. If you have a lot of individuals that utilize wheelchairs or have crutches or have physical disabilities, you might not want to move everyone across the court, because then you're going to have people with physical disabilities kind of behind. They won't be able to perform all the same exercises as everybody else. So making sure you're still incorporating them by maybe having, maybe not performing, cross the course stretches. Or if you do that, do it for a portion, less than a couple minutes, and then have exercises for people that utilize wheelchairs during that time. Maybe it's an upper body punch. Well, like if you have students marching for a warm up, because that's a warm up exercise, a dynamic stretch. So if you're marching, you could have the students in the wheelchairs, that are utilizing wheelchairs, just kind of march their arms. So they're still mimicking the upper body movements. And then you might have someone push them while they're doing that, like a partner during that time. And so something like skipping, so they would have to raise their arms up forcefully, just like you were skipping. Um, you could have a battle rope for them, so that if you wanted to do a substitution exercise, you could. But I would try to get them along with the other individuals on the court, so they feel included. And then also ask them, hey, do you feel comfortable going across the court, or do you want to do this exercise over here? So skipping is another great one, galloping, sliding across the court. These are all dynamic stretches we can perform. And then after that, we can perform some plyometric exercises like light pogos, two-legged pogos, one-legged pogos, hopping, jumping, and more power exercises. So just think, we've hit flexibility, we've also hit strength. Okay, we can do some push-ups and squats. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Push-ups and squats before the dynamic work. And then dynamic work, we get into the skipping and jumping, which gets into power, which gets into coordination, which gets into balance. So we're hitting all these health-related fitness components. I have an article here that a colleague and I have just written about, designing appropriate warm-ups and fitness progressions in secondary PE. It's called the fitness bucket approach. So we just got this published August 2024, August, September 24. And this goes over all the national guidelines on what the health-related fitness components includes. And then it goes over a plan in place of how to teach these components, as far as how to add them and implement them in your warm-up strategy. So like I said, we go over different things during our mobility portion. So in this paper, we set it up as buckets. So there's 4 training buckets. The first one is the movement bucket. So we start with the movement bucket, like breathing, mobility, stability or activation, dynamic stretching, and power. Or then we go into the power bucket. So it goes into agility, plyometrics, reaction time exercises. Then we go into something like the strength bucket. Okay, so if we were to prioritize fitness for the lesson after our warm-up, we would go into strength exercises. And then we would end it with conditioning exercises. So those are the 4 buckets: conditioning, strength, power, and movement, in the order of how I would design a exercise program around those 4 components. It also comes included with links to all of the playlists associated with each bucket, and it goes over playlists that will give you the videos, and I'll explain each bucket content. So breathing, mobility, stability, and dynamic stretches, I have them all on these YouTube playlists, and power and strength and conditioning. So also comes complete with a sample lesson plan of how to perform this in a time controlled manner throughout a 60-minute lesson plan. Okay, this is a copy of the bodyweight workout guide. So basically what I have on that website, I have included in this document here, and it's got links to all the different playlists. So if we're looking at something like, let's go into the dynamic stretching, because most people will probably be more familiar with that. Not sure, might have to copy and paste here. So if we go to this playlist on dynamic stretching, you'll see different videos of me going over different dynamic stretches. So we got toe touch to squat, inchworm, half squat, two-legged hip hinge, split squat, single leg reach, lateral squat, push up, just like side skip, high knees, multi-direction, just all the stuff we just mentioned, and it gives you a good guide on what to teach. So it goes in order. So breathing, mobility, stability, dynamic stretches. So this is I would include power and movement, those 2 buckets, into your warm-ups. You could add in some strength bucket as well. But if you were to plan a lesson, I would go movement, power, strength, and conditioning bucket if you was completely fitness. So this goes over the periodization of how I would set up fitness throughout a year. So summer, fall, winter, spring. So I'd have phases in each month. So in summer, I would have a June, July, August phase. So that would be phase 1. So, and then each of those phases would last 4 weeks. Okay. And then I would go into fall, then winter, then spring, and they would each have 3 months and then 3 phases within each month. And then when it comes to teaching this in your class, I have some good examples of students in my class going over these warm-up stretches. So here's an example of students stretching butterfly and forward fold. Here's a shoulder warm-up exercise where they're laying on their backs and just bringing their arms over their head. So that's just called the shoulder slide. Here's straight leg, toe touches across the court for individuals with intellectual disabilities here. A few individuals with physical disabilities. So when that happens, you can do more locomotor skills. Not that you can't when people are there with that utilize wheelchairs, but you do what you can within your environment and within your means. So if there's more people that utilize wheelchairs, you're gonna probably include them in more of your exercises. So you're gonna do less things that would exclude them. Here's some roly-poly, so just rolling on the back. Supine wide and long stretches, so you can tell them to just get as wide and as long as they can. So these are just learning about their body and space and time. Spaghetti meatballs, so they're on their back. I say spaghetti, they turn into a spaghetti, and I say meatball, they turn into a meatball. So just basic stretches, push-up holds. During this time, you can do some freeze dance. So let's see if I can find some freeze dance in here. Or that'll be in my, I might not have a video of that, but you can do kickboxing as well. So here's a 10-minute dynamic warm-up with Batman themed kickboxing. So I'm going over kickboxing with them in this video. So you can look at these, get familiar with how we warm up students in our class, and then try to copy some of our approaches if that works best for you. So there's your warm-up video playlist. When it comes to strength, we want to shorten the distance to move or propel an object. Let's just say, um, you know, you're pulling rope, you're probably gonna shorten the distance they need to pull that rope for strength. If they need that modification, you might have to use lighter equipment. You might have to use shorter and lighter striking implements. So if someone lacks strength, you have to adapt or modify. And ways to modify and adapt individuals that lack strength are doing these types of things and modifications. So allow students to sit or lie down while they're playing. So they might lack the strength just to kind of move side to side, so they might have to sit or lie down. Allow students to monitor their own fatigue. Use deflated balls or suspended balls, and then change movement requirements. So if someone lacks strength and they can't kick a ball that hard, use a deflated ball so it doesn't move as far, so then they don't have to move as far, or suspend the ball so that after they hit it, they don't have to go and get it. They can get more trials. So you can change their movement requirements based on their strength needs. If a student lacks speed, so if you're doing speed drills and they lack kind of the ability to move in different directions very fast, you might have to shorten the distance or change distances for different students. So if you have a zigzag drill, you might have to change. You might have a specific station just for that individual. You might have to change the locomotor pattern. Let's just say they don't move that well moving laterally. So you might have them just be like, all right, for this, you can still jog. So you just tell them to jog while other individuals are moving laterally. Equalize competition amongst teams. So making sure that if you have teams and they're doing some type of relay, you don't have all the speedsters on one team, making sure that they're equally distributed. And then make safe areas in tag games. And then I would also say add foam noodles for tag games so that you have a better reach. So if you're not moving that fast, maybe have an attached noodle to you so that you can use that. For students with limited endurance, obviously want to shorten the distance in playing area, allow for more rest periods, change movement requirements to reduce activity time, allow students to sit while playing, and decrease activity time for students if needed. For individuals that lack balance or have vestibular impairments, you want to provide a chair, a bar, or a buddy for support. That's the most important so they don't fall and hurt themselves. You want to teach balance techniques. Say, widen your base, use your arms. A lot of times individuals don't recognize where their feet are, and if your feet are very narrow, you're going to be more likely to fall over. So you want more of a wider base. You might have to use your arms, you might have to bend your knees a little bit more. Increase width of surfaces to be walked. Use carpeted areas rather than slick surfaces. That typically is better for balance. Teach students how to fall if needed or appropriate. Place student near a wall for support and lower center of gravity if possible. If an individual lacks coordination or accuracy skills, use stationary objects for kicking and striking because sometimes timing might be an issue. So instead of having someone pitch a ball in softball using a tee, or instead of running up to a ball that's moving, run up to a ball that's not moving. You may have to decrease distance for throwing, kicking, and striking. You may have to make targets or goals larger. You might have to use scars, balloons, bubbles to enhance visual tracking. You may have to increase surface of striking implements. You might have to use larger balls for kicking and striking. You might have to use softer, slower balls for striking and catching, or you could use lighter, less stable pins in bowling type games. I've done bowling games and low organized games where individual throws a beanbag at the pin and it doesn't knock over. Well, that's not what we want. We want them to feel, we want them to be able to have success. So sometimes you have to get lighter pins. For people with multiple disabilities, we want to be patient in teaching fitness. We want to be flexible. We want to use brightly colored equipment if possible. We want to use visuals for boundaries. So making sure if we need to have them in an area that's kind of coned off if possible to protect them maybe. Sometimes you got all these things going on in the gym So polyspots, cones, and ropes. Ropes are great attached to cones, um, because it outlines space. And sometimes when you're in such a big gym, you don't know where you're supposed to be, but you might have to kind of block off space for these individuals so it feels more condensed and so they can focus on what's in front of them. You may have to modify equipment. You might have to break tasks into smaller steps and just focus on small steps instead of the task. You may have to employ multi-sensory strategies like water, sand. You might have to be using some type of specialized equipment or sound, physical or verbal prompting. You might be really clapping, really cheerful, really enthusiastic. You might have to get other people involved to give you motivational techniques. You want to have self-paced activities. You can use stations or task cards, so just one thing at a time. Try not to change from task to task to task, and then give lots of positive reinforcement and praise, both verbal and physical. Students who utilize wheelchairs, always ask them, how can we adapt this exercise or activity for you? Um, get them out of their chairs. A lot of times they're in their chairs all day long and they don't get a chance to get out on their stomach, on their backs. Obviously, you have to talk with the PT, talk with their parent, talk with their special ed teacher, and know what can they do and what can't they do when it comes to getting in and out of their chairs. Are you allowed to help them out of their chair? Yes or no? Are they allowed to go out of their chair onto the ground? Yes or no? Are they allowed to go on their back? Yes or no? Are they allowed to go on their stomach? Are they allowed to go on their side? You never know with people that utilize wheelchairs. They could have equipment and tubes and things that you don't know about surrounding their body. Okay. Um, when it comes to balls that are moving, I would say use stationary balls. So try not to maybe when it comes to kicking, if they're throwing something, that they would have a ball that's stationary. Vary the distances. Use longer, lighter equipment. Lower the goals for individuals. Use alternate motions for locomotor patterns, and then clap out the rhythm or use varying speeds. Some individuals that utilize wheelchairs will have some movement in their legs, so you still may be working on mobility or just hey, can you kick my hands, or can you kick these foam noodles? It might be light kicking toward beach balls, but you might have to make sure that that's okay. Students with cerebral palsy use beach balls instead of use balloons or beach balls for these individuals when it comes to low organized games. Modify the rules or games if needed. Employ multi-sensory strategies and enlarge the targets. End activity before students get frustrated. Try not to overdo their physical or mental. Use extension for tag games like foam noodles. So if you're playing like a sharks and minnows game, and for a warm up, you have them hold on to a foam noodle so they can tag people. Use large scooters, create a boat on scooters, so sometimes you can tie scooters together, but be careful. Doing stuff like that can be a liability as well. Focus on reaching, grasping, and pushing for people with CP, and use slower locomotion patterns for regular education students, bear crawl, crab walk, roll, log roll, for specific exercises so that they can feel included. So everyone's kind of moving at the same pace. For people with visual impairments, safety's first. Keep it clean, avoid overprotecting, and notify of changes made to the gym. Provide physical assistance only if necessary. Increase the size of the equipment. Use bright equipment if they have some impairment but not full impairment. Use beep balls and bell balls, and then also use guides like a guided wire, or a carpet runner. For individuals with hearing impairments, determine start and stop signals beforehand. So tell them start might be arm is up, stop might be kind of like a stop with the arms, or it could be whatever signal that you've created with them. Use visual demonstrations and light prompts. Stand still when giving directions. Don't move all over the place. If people have a hearing impairment, they need to see you talk. They need to see your mouth. So making sure that especially they're in the front of the class, not behind people. during your warm-ups. So make sure they can see your lips, learn some basic sign language, and be aware of any balance issues. People with hearing impairments may also have balance issues as well, because the cochlear, the inner canal connects to the vestibular system, which is tied to your balance. And you have these semicircular canals that run, that are filled with crystals, and if they harden, that's when you have vestibular issues. So Down syndrome, intellectual disability, and traumatic brain injury. Be positive, avoid stress, especially in the neck area for people with Down syndrome, extension of the neck. They could have a lax disc. Highly structured environment. Make sure that you're doing one thing at a time. Have compartments or components of your class, and I'll go through that at the end of the lesson. Visual instruction, so give them demonstrations set up for success. Be consistent with motivation and keep it short and simple. Don't talk forever about an exercise or a skill. Just do this, not this, do this. Boom, go, teach it. All right, ready, go. So say less, demonstrate more, and then give as much feedback as possible. So when it comes to low organized games, what are the low organized games that we're going to teach? So here are some examples. Let's see. I don't think this is the one I'm looking for. All right. Low organized games. All right, so here's our low organized games. These low organized games can be used as warm-up exercises, activities. These low organized games can be used as just fun exercises or activities to perform as your warm-up or as a primary part of the lesson. Really, low organized games can be fit into your sport unit. So a lot of sports have lead-up skills and games, and low organized games would be included in that. So I would consider low organized games any games that include sport or fitness that enhance physical activity that are fun to play. Okay. When it comes to high organized games, I think of learning soccer, playing soccer 11 on 11 on a huge field. That's a high organized game. A low organized game would be a 4-on-4 soccer game, right? A little bit lower organized than a higher organized game, because higher organized games, you want officials, you want coaches, you want athletes. So low organized games are simple activities that include people with disabilities, that involve the health-related fitness components as well as the skill-related fitness, or the health-related fitness components and the skill-related fitness components. So including both. The main priority, the main goal of a low organized game, in my opinion, is fun. Then I think the development of the child would be second. And then third, I think, would be whether that's winning the game or being enthusiastic in the game or trying to achieve your best in the game would be kind of the third purpose. Some of these games like tag, where you might be out, you have to learn how to be out. And so it's good for students to play tag games and games where, you're trying to get someone else's flag, like flag tag. It's good to involve these games, but we don't involve them all the time. Most of our games are pretty inclusive and pretty cooperative. So here are some low organized game examples. So here's some freeze dance. So freeze dance is when we play the music and I'll pause it. And when I pause it, everyone freezes. When everyone freezes, the person who's leading the dance will then pick the new lead dancer. So here's an example here. We have a student leading freeze dance. Everyone's following their lead. They're doing a really good job, super enthusiastic. And we're gonna wait for freeze and see what happens. Freeze. All right, now everyone freezes. And then I'll say, hey, has anyone not gone yet? raise your hand if you want to be the next lead dancer. That way they can call on someone that hasn't gone yet. And then someone else comes up and they become the lead dancer and everyone follows their lead. And then kind of we repeat the process. So this is freeze dance. This is my favorite low organized game. That's why it's at the top. So you can do this through student-led means. Parachute games are super fun. I have a couple examples here. This is called parachute pizza. So basically you bring the parachute all the way up and then you let it go, and then it usually gets caught on somebody and it's kind of fun, and it's just a fun cooperative game. We have popcorn parachute. I'm sure you've seen that, where you're lifting the parachute up and then you snap it down, and then all the popcorn and all the balls off on the parachute kind of go all over the place. Okay, I'll give you a couple more examples. So we got parachute games here. Rollerball. This is when you put two noodles together with a partner, and then you roll a wiffle ball back and forth, and you see how many times you can do that. This is a more of an advanced skill, so you might have to use a bigger ball, okay? But they love having the challenge. You got to challenge your students too. This is just called gone fishing, where we kind of pretend that we're fishing on the ground, and we do all the different fishing parts, like reeling it in. What type of fish did you catch? I think that's really fun for people. Here's a simple mirror drill. So you take two people you have one lead teacher, and you have that lead teacher move side to side, forward and back, and then the class will repeat what that individual is doing. And then you can have a new leader go side to side, forward and back, anything they want. And you can call it joystick, you can call it mirror drill. Here is indoor disc golf. If you haven't done that, it's pretty easy setup. All you gotta do is just set up cones around maybe 5 stations, 5 cones, and then have a hula hoop there. And then you can get into some quick disc golf, indoor disc golf. Hockey knockout. This is when you have, or you can call it hockey sharks and minnows, basically, where you have one person who is on the defense, who is trying to kind of get your hockey yarn ball out of the volleyball court. So there's a place within the gym that's the volleyball court, and you're trying to knock everyone else's yarn ball out. Hungry Hungry Hippo Soccer Edition. So putting all the soccer balls in the middle of the court, and then finding like 6 to 10 hula hoops on the outside of the court and teaming them up with individuals, and they dribble to the middle and then they dribble back to their station. Hungry Hungry Hippos version. Kickboxing. Kickboxing is a nice low organized game. It can also be included in your warm-up. I usually teach both how to jab, the cross, uppercut, hook, the uppercut, the hook, and then I'll do both the front kicks, side kicks, and I'll do some jump kicks too. So here's Spud. So Spud is a game where someone will call out a number, someone will then throw the ball in the air, and then if it is your number, you get the ball, and then everyone has to make a line, and then that person tries to roll the ball through everyone's leg. So this is a kind of a low organized game. Now, can be tough for individuals that utilize wheelchairs, so you'd have to think of some accommodations. Maybe they take a noodle, and instead of standing with their legs apart, they put a noodle in the back or in the front. Sharks and Minnows, one of my favorite all-time games. Usually what I'll do for this game is I will have students go based on the color of their shirt, so not everyone is going all at the same time. Because if you have 30 students lined up on the side of the gym, so basically Sharks and Minnows, when you have 30 students lined up on one side of the gym, and then you have one student in the middle, and then all 30 not at the same time, you want to call out different colors, start going across the gym, and then the shark in the middle of the gym goes after the minnows with a noodle. And if you get caught, you become a shark, and then you try to get the minnows the next round. And then the students basically sprint across the gym, dodging, fleeing, dodging others, those are all locomotor skills. Chase, so you got chasing, fleeing, and dodging in sharks and minnows, which is awesome, because dodging typically would involve dodging a ball, but you don't have to dodge a ball. You're just being dodged by being tagged. We got lots of noodle activities. So you could do noodle in a balloon is a very easy, low organized game that gets people kind of moving and focusing on coordination and balance. Let me get some of these out of the way here first. Partner row, that's a quick, low organized activity where you have one person pulling it and the other person resisting a jersey. So this can be done as a warm-up or as just a low organized activity. You also can do, let's see, we have swipe the ghost. So this is when you're trying to swipe a scarf with your paddle or racket. This is just encouraging paddle skills and development. So for people that are learning how to underhand hit a wiffle ball with a paddle, or how to serve. So this kind of be some pre-skills, but also a game and fun activity, which is why we call it a low organized game. The javelin throw, so you could line individuals up on one side of the court and have them throw and noodle all at the same time and just see where the noodles go in space. And that's usually a really fun exercise and activity that you can perform with your students. They usually like that one. We have an island game. So basically islands is when you have students scattered in hula hoops and they travel around on their islands. Well, first they start on their island, they become a seed, and then they turn into a tree, and then they design their tree and they climb their tree, and then they move around the islands, and then the islands become fun tasks for them to play with. So they start spinning the hula hoops, and just some low organized games, because all it is you just scatter hula hoops around the gym. You have everyone get inside of a hoop. You do some games inside of the hoop, you do some games outside of the hoop, and then you play with the hoops. Pretty easy. Red light, green light, one of my favorite ways to teach many different games. So red light, stop, green light, go, and then yellow light can be something like dribbling or squatting, or it could be like we're doing here, around the world. And so you can do red light, green light with soccer, you can do it with basketball, you can do it with lacrosse, you can do bear crawl, red light, green light, you could do crab walk, green light, you could do scooter. So red light, green light is just a fun across the court activity. Here's one, red light, green light with balance beanbags on top of the head. So challenging some balance on the head, so keeping the head still. Or you can use a poly spot instead of a beanbag. Basketball keep away, that's another low organized game where you have a group of 3 or 4 and you have one person in the middle, and 3 or 4 on the outside are kind of passing it around the one person in the middle. Time machine, this one is a low organized game, but you will have a lot of fun with this one. So basically you take a hula hoop, you put it on the ground, someone jumps in it, they jump in it, you basically pick up the hula hoop and put it around them like a time machine, and then they jump back in, and then you're kind of moving around the court. So one person is squatting and the other person is jumping. So this is a hidden fitness exercise, is what we like to call it. Ring the cone. This is basically scatter cones around the gym, and then you ring it with a hula hoop. So you put the cones on the inside of the gym in a rectangle shape, and then the students are in a bigger rectangle outside of that space with a hula hoop trying to hula a cone. We have a scarf switch, where basically you throw a scarf up into the air and then you switch with your partner, and you can modify this by shortening or lengthening the distance, and you can make it harder by using a ball instead of a scarf. Okay. What else we got here? Zombie tag. So basically zombie tag, when you wake up from being a zombie, as I'm doing here, you run after everyone, and if you catch someone, they become a zombie with you, and every time you go to catch everyone, you have to wake up from the dead. So that was a Halloween game. Flag tag, or scarf tag. You put a scarf in your pocket or a flag, and basically you go around the gym one-on-one with your partner, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, and then everyone versus everybody. And it can get dangerous, so be careful because everyone's running around the gym playing flag tag. Probably our favorite game. And notice that none of these games you're really out. None of these games, there's like not really a score. They're not really playing for points. You can gamify anything, obviously, if that motivates them. So obviously do it if it enhances them. But you can just play these games just to play these games too. So remember, it's about fun too. Hungry Hippos scooter version. This is with some vegetable bean bags and fruit bean bags and meal bean bags where you could have them create a plate of food if you wanted to with this Hungry Hippos games. You could tell them that the yarn balls are fat, tennis balls are carbs, and that like the bean bags are vegetables or something like that. Or any type of game that you'd want if you wanted to add in some nutrition. Frog in the middle, circle flag tag, partner balloon, cornhole, can jam, soccer dribble, ICIC. ICIC is an animal game where basically you yell out, I see a rabbit. And so then everyone jumps around like a rabbit. And then you stop and you go, freeze. I see. And then you go, John, what do you see? And then John will be like, a zebra. And then everyone will be like, all right, run around like a zebra. And then you'll go, freeze. And you go, all right, Sarah, what do you see? You first yell, I see. And then you say, Sarah, what do you see? And they're like, I see a monkey. And then everyone acts like a monkey. So that's another low organized game. Here's some jump rope games. This one's called Snakes, where you have two people slithering a snake and one other person is jumping over the snake. So getting some plyometric, reaction time, as well as coordination, balance, strength. Swinging bridge, same type of game, but now you're swinging a bridge and they're jumping over it while they're running. I also have pirate ship, where you basically tell everyone you're on a pirate ship. And you say, hey, the captain's coming. Everyone says, aye, captain. You say, all right, we're going to go ahead and climb the ladder. And we're going to climb up. And then we're going to go and we're going to look out in our telescopes. And we're going to see if there's any pirates. If there's any pirates, if they get here, we need to learn how to kickbox. And then you teach them how to kickbox. Oh, here come the pirates. We're going to pretend that we're going against the pirates. Maybe you have some noodles and you're kind of pretending that you're fighting off the pirates that way. So that's called pirate ship. So these are all my low organized games video examples. Feel free to check these out when you have this PowerPoint. When it comes to equipment characteristics, you can make the weight of an object lighter or heavier. You can make the size of an object smaller or larger. You can make the shape of an object regular or irregular. For grip purposes, you can make something higher or lower when it comes to height. For speed, it can be obviously slower, faster, distance, closer or further away, sound, soft or noisy. Color can be pale to bright. Trajectory can be medium level to high or low level. So, what is the trajectory of the flying implement? Direction can be forward, backwards, sideways, right, and left. Surface contact can be increased and decreased. Surface or texture can be smooth, rough, or uneven. Length can be shorter, longer. Resiliency can be less and more. When it comes to modifications for capability differences in locomotor, object propulsion, and object receptive skills, we have easy to difficult. So basically for locomotor, when it comes to space and speed, would be probably the easiest. Fast within a small space with others moving fast would be the most difficult. Slowly within a large space and individually would be easy, and then fast within a small space with others moving fast would be the most difficult. Object propulsion, like we just talked about, you can have things going far, near, can be very close. As far as distance goes, the ball size can be small or large. Ball shape can be round, oblong, or regular. All these different types of ways we can adapt equipment when we're playing low organized games or sports. For badminton specifically, you can use oversized rackets, larger birdies, lower the net, Allow all students to sit while playing instead of just one student. Eliminate the net, so just maybe have a jump rope on the ground instead, or nothing at all. Use a balloon instead of a birdie. For basketball, you can use smaller, lighter balls. You can use different types of balls, playground balls. Lower the goals. You can use a goal with larger circumference. You can modify the rules. You can modify the playing area. Bowling, you can use lighter balls, lighter pins, fewer pins. Allow students to push a ball while sitting. You can use a ramp. You can allow 3 tries instead of 2. You can use empty milk jugs as pins. And you can use noodles as lanes. Floor hockey, you can use oversized sticks, lighter sticks, larger balls. You can increase the size of the goal. You can use a smaller playing area. You can modify the rules. You don't have to use goalies. For kickball, use a bigger ball. I don't really play that much kickball. You can allow students to use a hockey stick to contact the ball if they utilize a wheelchair. You can decrease distance to the base. You can use one base and allow students to kickball when they're stationary. For soccer, you can use a lighter, larger ball. You can allow students to use a hockey stick instead of kicking a ball. You can use smaller playing area. You can have them play with a buddy. Allow student to walk up to ball or roll wheelchair to ball, and you can use a larger ball. When it comes to softball, use a larger, brighter ball, lighter bat, sounds in the ball if possible. Use shorter distance around the bases. You can have sounds at the bases. You can use just one base instead of 3. You can allow more than 3 strikes. You can use a batting tee and give them more time to get to the bases. For volleyball, use a beach ball or a balloon instead of actual volleyball. Allow students to sit on the floor. You can lower the net. You don't have to use the net at all. You can use smaller playing court. You can allow the ball to bounce. And you can allow for unlimited hits. And you can allow more than one try while serving. So when it comes to lesson plan scenario variables, you need to ask yourself, how long is the program? How long is the unit? How long is the curriculum going to last? Is it 1 month, 1 year? How many classes am I teaching? How long is the class I'm teaching? How does this class fit into the unit, program, or curriculum? So the curriculum or your scope and sequence, you should have a kind of year outline, and you should base this year outline on standards. And the standards are there to kind of outline your curriculum, okay? And they're going to have curriculum models like we talked about in the beginning that you'll choose, or skill themes that you'll choose. I generally like the skill theme approach for K through 5, and then I like sport and fitness education, or I like sport education more so in middle school, and then I like fitness and health education more so in high school. But I always include sports skills throughout their lifetime. What will be the topic? How many people are involved? What is the disability types of the participants? Are we getting support from staff or mentors? What's the space or the environment in the pool or in the gym? And what equipment do we have? When it comes to IEP setting, lesson planning, first we assess, we get the PLP, present level performance, then we create learning outcomes based on goals, and then these certain learning outcomes are described in the lesson plan, and the student learning outcomes are based off standards and meaningful PE. We create the IEP, whether that's in our lesson plans, so we adapt them so that they meet their goals in our lesson plans, or we're the ones creating their IEP and implementing their IEP. So we're adapted PE teachers would do that one-on-one, or the general PE teacher will implement those goals in their lesson plan. So the adaptive PE teacher would have to consult with you what those goals are, so you try to meet those in your classes the best that you can. When it comes to sequencing for fitness or sport, so if it's going to be a lesson based fully on fitness only, then you're going to want to set the induction, which is just kind of outline what you're going to do for the day. Then you're going to go over your breathing, self-myofascial release or foam rolling, stretching, mobility. Then you go over motor control and activation drills, get into your dynamic warm-up and agility, then power and strength, and then get into your conditioning. So that's how it's sequenced for fitness. If I'm sequencing for sport, I'll set the induction, tell everyone what I'm doing for the day, what we're doing. We do some stretching, dynamic stretching and strength exercises, dancing or kickboxing. And then we'd have a theme game or sports skill, so a low organized game or sports skill, and then sports skill progressions, and then a mini game. So that's how I would teach sport. For the summer lab, this is an example of what we did for summer lab. We set the induction, we did some breathing, stretching, mobility, we did strength, stability, and balance, we did locomotor and dynamic skills, we did some student and teacher-led boxing, so that's a low organized game, and then we did teacher and student-led freeze dance, which is another low organized game, and we did teacher-led fun group games. So basically, it was a low organized game day after the warm-up. So that's all we did for that first day. Common adaptive PE goals. So typical goals you're going to see for individuals are going to be to increase cardiovascular endurance. How are you going to do that? Well, just include games like sharks and minnows, red light, green light. To develop hand-eye foot coordination or rhythm, that's why we teach dance, kickboxing, and sports skills like badminton and pickleball. To increase time on task in physical education, that's why we structure things so that they are, we go one step at a time to increase time on task in physical education, and we develop meaningful PE lessons. Another goal in APE is to develop functional competence and locomotor object control skills. So we're always going over how forceful we can do things, how fast we can do things, and how accurate we can do things when it comes to object control and locomotor skills. So we're always trying to increase those skills specifically in PE. To improve social interaction with peers, so we always want to make people feel comfortable by interacting with each other, and we want to develop understanding of skills and rules required for the sport or game, and we want to build endurance, cardiovascular capacity, and strength. So those are just some goals that you'll typically see in adaptive PE. So there's 3 different types of lesson planning. The IEP, this is specific to one person with a disability, and it's unique just to them. And then you have general PE lesson plan. This is your general PE. And then you have unified lesson planning. So for this example, my lab had inclusive lesson plans for groups, and unified lesson plan is when you have half the students with disabilities, half the students without disabilities. Or you design it so both individuals with disabilities and without disabilities can do the same activities together. And so this type of planning uses the universal design UDL learning approach, where you're thinking about, well, anyone could be in my class, so what would I teach? And so generally, that's why I teach the way we teach when it comes to adaptive PE. When we go over mobility first, we go over breathing first, we go over activation, dynamic stretching, we go over movement skills first. We do this because we want people to be physically literate, how to move, why moving is important, and then we get into low organized games and or sports skills or fitness if that is the goal. We'll talk more about swimming in our in a couple lessons, so I won't go over too much here, but here's a general overview of how we'd go over sequencing for swimming. When it comes to, where are we going now? There we go. All right. So, questions to ask yourself when you're planning. Why did you choose this activity? Yeah. What are ways students can participate in the activity regardless of the ability? Who are you teaching it to? What will you be teaching them? How will you teach them? How long will each activity be? What activities will there be? How will each activity progress into the next activity? You have to ask yourself these questions when you're planning a lesson. This is going to help you not only when you teach the lesson, but you're going to be prepared for anything. So does my plan meet any standards? Of course, hopefully. Am I able to measure every activity in some capacity, whether that's time on task, whether it's social effectiveness? How many rep sets for each exercise or activity are they're going to be? Make sure that you're is either a time of how many reps you're going to do, how many sets you're going to do, or how long will each exercise or activity be. Will there be planned breaks? So you want to make sure that you plan in some water breaks. And what questions will you ask the students? So you're going to want to ask them questions during the lesson. So maybe have questions written out for each task that you teach. And then what discussions will you present? When it comes to task presentation, when you teach your lesson, you will perform task presentations for each part of the lesson plan. So first, is a set induction. What you will say to your audience to begin the class. It should usually last 1 to 2 minutes. Your warm up, how will you warm the class up, whether it's yoga, dance, kickboxing, stretching, or any other means. And then task one, describe, demo, students perform, then teach. This should be about 30 minutes. Okay, so each task you should describe what you're teaching them. You should demo it, students perform it, and then you teach something else. So after you teach maybe three main tasks, so my first task might be a variety of skills. My second task might be my first task might be for a variety of skills for people individually. My second task might be in groups, and then the third task might be the mini game. So that's kind of how I would go through each task. And then each task would have extensions. So task one, individual skills will have, dribbling across court, all these different dribbling drills. Task two would be passing with a partner, doing things with a group. And then task three would be actual gameplay and then how you progress. What's included in a task? So a task is the activity that will be performed during the amount of time allotted. Each task should have a description, extension, refinement, and IEP modification. So everything you teach should have some type of modification for people with disabilities if needed. Each task should have specific measurable objectives that students can perform for a meaningful amount of time or reps. Reps and time should be accounted for each task. Each task should be described, demonstrated, and students should also see the setup of the activity before it occurs. Each task can be performed in cooperative group activity or in stations or in quadrants of the gymnasium. Example task, 10 minutes, student-led obstacle course. Students will get a partner in 5 cones. They will create an obstacle course in 1 minute using 3 locomotor skills and 2 non-manipulative skills like bending, rolling, jumping, or stretching. So extensions, what is an extension? So adding a challenge or progression to the task, like adding combinations or complexity. Refinements, so you want to talk about the common mistakes that can be corrected with cues. So if you know that people generally bend over when they dribble, make sure that you use refinements and talk about the mistakes like bending over. Tell them stand up nice and tall. Modifications, students who utilize wheelchairs will be given bigger cones or more space if needed. So that'd be an example. Assessment, how do we get the students to work together? So that would be a question that you could ask them with enthusiasm, with good attitude. One needs improvement. So you can assess each student on how well they work together, and you could give them a 3, 2, or 1 score. You could ask students to list some cues for one skill during their teaching performance to the class. That could be a cognitive assessment. And another assessment, ask students to draw their obstacle course after their class and write the purpose of the activity. So that would be another way you can show that they learned a task is by them drawing what they learned. Here's a general lesson plan template that you can use for general PE that involves your set induction, warm-up description, and then your task. Your warm-up will be pretty long compared to your task 1, 2, and 3. So this would be task 1, kickboxing, task 2, dance, task 3, cooperative games, and it looks like there's a closure here. So if we look at an example, what the unit goal is, lesson summary, lesson big idea or focus, any academic language you're using, the standards that you're applying, your objectives that you're going to be performing in the domain that you're teaching them, and any shape or NC standards that apply. And you'll go over the set induction, the warm-up, as far as the stretching, motor control, dynamic stretching, power, strength, conditioning, okay? Then we have all the stuff that we're gonna do for stretching, extensions, task 2, motor control. So these are all the different exercises we're performing within that. That's for more general PE. When it comes to unified lesson planning, this is kind of more going to be more related to people with disabilities. This template here is a visual lesson plan so that people with disabilities can see and examine the lesson plan itself, and it's also going to come with student learning objectives and cues for learning. I'm going to show you an example of that. So if we look at handball, here's an example of a handball lesson where we have the introduction. We're walking and talking, finding a mat, stretch out on own. 2, standing and seated warm-ups. So these are some stretches with some visuals. Resistance training. So we did some resistance training in this lesson, kickboxing. And then we got into handball individual skills, handball partner or trio skills, and then handball game. And then there was cleanup. Okay, so that would be an example of a mentee visual. Let's see if I have another one here. Here's our first day of lab where it looks like we did some freeze dance, YMCA dance. We did locomotor freeze, ICIC, red light, green light. We did underhanding rolling. We did a beanbag relay and some bocce, and we did some partner bowling. Okay, and then a little assessment here as well. It looks like we did the fitness gram or the Brockport fitness test within the warm-up. So we measured flexibility, strength, and heart rate that day. Let's see, here is the softball lesson plan with the topic objectives, activity description and modification, and cues. So this template goes over all the different standards in one column as well as the activity description and modifications in the other columns. And again, another visual lesson plan of what we were teaching. Okay, we're going to go over those lesson plans when it comes to invasion games, when it comes to net and wall games and accuracy games in our next lesson. So we're going to talk about, and we're going to show you videos of how to teach sports. And then our last video, our last lesson planning video, we're going to get into aquatics. Okay, and then we'll finish it up with effective instruction. So that was lesson planning for individuals with disabilities. If you want any more adaptive physical education resources, click here at supportrealteachers.com/adaptive physical education, and it will give you some more guides on how to teach people with disabilities, gives you more information on IEPs and other resources. Again, lots of resources in here. If you scroll all the way back up here and go to all these resources in the beginning, use as many as you want to help teach your classes or your adaptive PE students, okay?